Today we'll be talking about strengthening research with insightful gap-driven objectives, travel around the world, bring to you an erudite scholar from the University of Brasília in Brazil by name Dr. Leonardo Pateno, who is an associate professor. Professor Leonardo, you now have the floor.
I'm from chemistry background and material science, so hard sciences. We use a lot of, let's say, methods and techniques to address this problem that is identifying gaps to shaping impactful questions. So the point is, for doing a good research, we need first to formulate a good problem. We need to know what's the problem that needs to be solved. So this is the most important thing that drives your path to do good research. So why do research gaps matter, right? So we have some illustrations here to help us to understand this. Things here are obvious, right? But when we are doing research, sometimes we don't see that. So first of all, of course, because we drive innovation and originality. So that's why do research gaps is important, right? And the second is like to prevent repetition of known results. We see the guy here from a prehistoric era. This guy is trying to reinvent the wheel, so we cannot do that, right? We need to save time. We cannot do something that is already done, right? And everything is done in the direction of increasing the relevance and impact. So it's something that people is going to use. It's going to be good for people, for the planet, for the environment, for everything. So what types of gaps we have? So we can like make a list of it. And here I'm putting the most important. So the knowledge, this is a gap, right? So some data or findings are missing. For example, we have microplastics in tropical climates. We don't have data on that. We have no idea what is going on that. So this is a type of research gap. So we need to know, right? We have also type of a methodological gap, like we use inadequate tools or methods, like it's difficult to sample the sample, like we going to collect water from a lake, but the lake is far away from the laboratory, so you need someone to go over to take the water. How this guy manipulates and stores the water and brings back to the laboratory? So this is a problem, for instance, that we have very common in our laboratory. We have a theoretical gap, so there's no framework to explain findings. So here, this is something that funny or weird, like emotion, artificial intelligence lacks theory, for instance. That's something important. We have also some that is contextual, like understudied settings or populations, low-income regions, or something that you have data, but they are not enough to propose a methodology or to create a framework for theoretical explanation, right? So what kind of tools we use to find those gaps? So when we do research in academia, especially, what is important, we need to know the literature where the subject we're starting to work with is located, right? So for those things, nowadays we have a lot of tools. We can use just a simple computer, right? So we have, I believe most of you or all of you are familiar with, so we can use first Google, of course, Google Scholar, and then we can move to more specific platforms like Elsevier, Scopus, Web of Science, or CAS Finder, right? This is something that we can do. So we can just use keywords regarded to our subjects of research and try to find citations, information regarding that theme, that subject, right? We can do some bibliometric analysis, like using VOC Viewer, so we can make some idea of a statistics of some subject. It's been cited a lot, for how long, since then, so this is important, right? And one last thing here is about the review articles. So these are very important. They're very suitable for those who will have their first contact with the area. So it's very common for us to give, at the beginning, the student starts reading review articles because they have a more general view of an overview of the area, with few details, but a lot of references, so you can start from the very beginning. It's better than you just go to the Google or to those onto these other platforms and use keywords to find something. It's better if you have an indication of a review article. So here is an example of a general problem like a gut-brain axis in youth. So there is a review paper which has this title, Gut Microbiome and Mental Health, which is from 2021. And then a gap is found there, few longitudinal studies in adolescents, in teenagers. So here there is an opportunity of doing impactful research. So we studied the microbiota over 2 years in teens of anxiety, right? So this is an example, but we could find many others. So for having success in doing formulation of problem or trying to solve a good research problem, we have to bear in mind a well-formulated objective. So, for example, I have two here. Increase website traffic by 20% within 6 months. Why this objective is very good? Because it's specific, so it has a goal, a scenario, which is well-defined, like website traffic. Is measurable because it gives a number here, 20% increase, right? Achievable, of course, given appropriate marketing efforts and relevant to business growth, for instance, and time-bound within 6 months. So this is a very well-formulated objective, right? A second one, reduce customer services response time to under 24 hours for all inquiries within 1 month. So you see here, it's similar to the previous one because it's very well-focused, right? In a specific area, which is customer service, okay? Defines a measurable target, which is under 24 hours, right? And sets a realistic time frame, 1 month, and is relevant to improving customer satisfaction. So you see here, is well formulated. However, we all the time keep doing poorly formulated objects, and we need to get rid of them, right? For example, improve customer satisfaction. So we're just using the previous ones in a poorly formulated way. So you see here that this objective is too vague. It doesn't specify how satisfaction will be improved or measured. There's no numbers, for instance, right? There's no time, so it's difficult. Use this object as a starting point. The second one, increase sales. Okay, while increasing sales is good overall goal, this object lacks the specifics. What kind of sales, right? By how much? I mean, how much money you're going to improve? By when? So time is important here as well. And the last one, work harder. This is common when our advisors says to us, right? When we are students. But this is difficult because this is not measurable as well. It doesn't specify what actions should be taken. So we must be more clear. So here I list some SMART objectives, general objectives, right? So first of all, you must be specific. This is very important, right? We have well-defined focus. For example, here, I'm going to share with you the experience in one of the problems we have in our laboratory, which is produce a sensor for measuring ethanol, alcohol, right, in drinks. Okay. Second one, it has to be measurable. The outcomes need to be quantifiable, like detection in the range established by field regulations. This is important, right? This is the case where my work is going on. So we need to detect ethanol in the range that the food regulations established to us, right? Third, has to be achievable, feasible with available resources. For instance, my objective here is achievable in a chemistry lab infrastructure that I have here in Brazil. So that's fine. Has to be relevant, right? This is very important. I think it's the most important thing. It has to be linked to a meaningful gap, like in this case, lack of fast and on-site monitoring technologies. This is the problem that we have identified, right? And the time bound, we have to define a time frame. So it depends. So if you have the support of a company, how much time the company gives us to develop this technology, for example. What's your common mistakes? So I showed you before some formulate objectives. So first of all, they are vague or they are very broad. This is terrible. For example, it's common to students keeping developing solutions for problems that do not exist, right? So the formulation of the object has to start with knowing the problem. What's the problem you want to solve? This problem is relevant, great. So how we solve that, okay? Or my solution solves it. This is a good question too, right? And for example, we ignore literature-derived gaps. What's really new and what's just continuation of previous work, which is very common. We see we are doing a research that we changed a few parameters from something that has been done in the past. So this is not new at all, right? We need something completely different, original, right? And also, which is very important nowadays in our daily life, our research has to be interdisciplinary all the time. And also it can help problems like it may not work properly in one situation, which is common, but it's potentially promising in another one. So here is a practical problem, right? And of course, I'm using an example that I am familiar with, which is my research problem, okay? So we have a gap, a research question, and we need to make a smart objective. So the gap is the problem. What's the gap here in my research nowadays? Lack of sensors for measuring ethanol in kombucha. Just a parenthesis here, I don't know if you're familiar with, but kombucha is a kind of probiotic drink, which is made of fermentation of tea. So it's very good for the health, okay? And is circulating a lot of money. So we have here for 2023, a market of about $13 billion, okay? Only in this year, 2024, the market was about over $4 billion. So this is very important, okay? And what's the problem? Because this is a fermentation product, happens that it produces ethanol, which is alcohol, right? So this is a drink, but it's not alcoholic drink. So we have to be strictful in controlling the levels of ethanol. And it would be very nice if the producer had equipment that could do this inline during production, okay? So that's our laboratory nowadays. So how will we solve this problem? We are using interdisciplinary thinking, which is very common in research nowadays. So to solve this gap, I need multiple fields. Drink, which is a beverage. So we are working with microbiology, food engineering, right? And then we are trying to do something that is electronic, an instrument that anyone can just read and say it's okay or it's not. It's above the level which is allowed or is below, right? So we need electronics, we need chemistry, of course, because all the interactions are running by chemistry. And at the end, we have a lot of data. So we need data science. So it has involved a lot of things, right? And this is the example that we have at the end. This is the electronic tongue. That's the name. This is an electronic equipment that tries to emulate the gustatory biological system of the humankind, all the mammals, right? So what's the problem here was to detect ethanol and acetic acid in this drink. What's the gap? Lack of low-cost in situ tools that it can keep measuring on time, online, right? What the solution that we found to solve that? Impedimetric electronic tongue. I'm not going into details here, but just as electronic equipment, we have the picture here, the photograph. So it's a portable system. We can carry on everywhere, right? It's easy to carry. And it has a computer inside of it, a microcomputer. Everything is controlled by the system. So it can be trained using machine learning algorithms. So it works like a human cyber equipment, right? And involves a lot of disciplines to solve a simple problem. So what's my final tips? You have to be curious. This is fundamental, right? If you're not curious, you're not going to do research, of course. You must be strategic. So we need to address what needs impact. You cannot just doing research for fun, right? You have to do research to solve problems that the humanity is facing nowadays, right? And you must be interdisciplinary. I mean, you have to think beyond your field. In Brazil, we say you have to think beyond your box. You are inside that box. You have to move out of your box and think in a different way. Thank you for this invitation again. Questions and comments, I'm open for this. I have my email address here. You can contact me anytime. And move further, I have two questions for the audience. This is my first question. What are 5 good research questions. I mean, as I said you before, when you are starting a research, you have to make a question which is, what's the problem I want to solve, right? And how I solve it. But first of all, you need to know the problem. You must fall in love with the problem and not fall in love with the solution. This is very important. What 5 good research questions would you do after my presentation if you could grasp something? What's the problem to be solved, right? This is the first question we have to bear in mind. And every good research project solves some particular problem, exactly. And it has to be an important problem. This is the second point. I would say the first one, right? Because research is very expensive. So we cannot keep spending money on something that don't solve problems to humanity. This is very important to everyone, okay? Second, who cares about this problem and why? This is also important, right? What have others done? Because you cannot start reinventing the wheel, remember? You have to start something which is at the edge of the knowledge, right? Not something that was in the past, okay? And what's your solution to the problem? And how can you demonstrate that your solution is a good one? So those are important questions that you have to bear in mind at the very beginning of your research, okay? The second question, how can you identify a research gap and formulate a focused research question to ensure the topic is relevant and manageable? This is harder. This is a bit harder. We have kind of a steps that you have to follow, right? The very beginning is to review the literature. As soon as you define it before, what's my problem? Is relevant. I have a solution for that, or I believe I have my solution is going to solve it. Great. First point, very beginning, review of the literature. And I advise that we start with reading review papers because they have a broader citation. They are more concerned to review basic concepts of that subject and try to situate it in the state-of-art appearance, right? So this is very important. I would start with that. The first thing is the review. It's a part of literature, which is a kind of an end to work. You have to do every day, constantly. We cannot stop it, right? If you have an agenda of your PhD or master degree, you must have every month market that you're going to read papers, books, internet, YouTube, whatever, right? You have to keep up to date all the time, right? As I said, to consult recent reviews, of course, and meta-analysis, because this is available now, much more available. You can use artificial intelligence. You can ask Google, any kind of softwares that help you, ChatGPT or anything, right? Analyze methodological limitations, which is very important, especially depending upon your sponsor, right? The size of your lab or the size of your group, how much money we have. This is important. Look for emerging topics. Of course, we have to solve something that is up to date, that the humanity is looking at and is not solving yet, right? We can ask for feedback from experts, of course, it is obvious. And you use research gap databases too, as I said before. We have this available. You can just keep using a cell phone. You can do this every time.
Thank you very much, Prof. We appreciate you. We love you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest, it's time for question and answer.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My question goes thus. Like he said in the intro, that a good research will not repeat what someone has done. How do we know that someone has done findings on a particular research problem? I have a research question here, and I want to know if it is okay. It goes thus. A co-excel program, teachers' productivity and learning outcomes of pupils in Lagos State Public Primary Schools.
Okay. The first one, so the point is literature review. You must be all the time alert and up to date regarding the papers and the manuscripts and everything. So what I put some keywords that are regarded to the subject that you are working with, and then start to run literature review. This is the point. And then use the other platforms like Web of Science or Scopus, because there you can find something regarded to our work, of course. And more than that, more importantly, if this work has done already what I'm trying to do now. So just reading. This is the only way to find that you're not doing something that is useless right now. You cannot start doing something if you do not know the literature that has made the foundations of this field. This is definitely the most important thing.
What exactly do one pay attention to in order to identify and bring out the gap in a particular journal?
What usually we do is like this. We have a subject, so we need a keyword for that to start a literature review. However, in parallel, what we can do is like, because he said about journal, one of the things that we do in material science, chemistry, hard science in general, we look for journals which has a very high impact factor, like Science, Nature, and other ones which are specific of each area. And you keep like tracking the papers we have there to have like an overview, what is going to be important and impactful. This is the first point, because if you just write the keyword in a search tool, you're going to find everything. And you can have like different ways of seeing them, like by citations, by year, by relevance, they measure in a different way. However, one of the things that I advise my students and we try to do is keep tracking in high impact fact journals. We can keep like the impact factor is something that is sometimes artificial and things like that. I agree completely. However, we cannot say that everything is like that. We know that journals with very high impact usually publish things that are more impactful than others. I try to convince my students to keep looking at this kind of things. And then, after a good tracking, try to find the gaps. It's difficult. It's difficult. Like in our area here is a very hot area, so people keep publishing every week thousands of papers, but we know already what problems are more important, and then we try to figure out publications and literature that regards this kind of problems.
Thank you so much, Professor Leonardo. In fact, this is in line with what I asked like 2 weeks or 2 meetings we had back, and you have addressed it. And from what you said, I jotted some things down. You said, what is the problem to be solved? Who cares about the problem and why? And what have others done? What is your solution to the problem? And how can you demonstrate that your solution is a good one? The area I'm having a little problem is how do I know who cares about this problem? Are they like the stakeholders or the people that might benefit from the research?
Yeah, that's the answer. You need to know relevant problems. This is the first point. Without thinking about your solution, suppose that you have one, right? You already have, because this is the problem now. I mean, we have developed a system that can emulate the gustatory system, so you can taste the things. So my problem now is like this. Which problem can be solved with that? And so we need to find problems. And this is the different way, because it's not really scientific. It's more like using Google tools, and then you try like reading a newspaper and you see like, oh, this company has a problem that they cannot measure the thing online. They just measure this in the laboratory. They spend a lot of money. So this is one thing. So you need to know problems. Then as soon as you have your problem well in mind, then you can have an idea if your solution solve it. If your solution solve it, it has relevance. Someone is looking for that. This is one point. However, this is not the only one, because like when you think about technology, you don't go only to scientific papers, but you go to stores. And if you look at the internet, you have everything. Like one of these days, one of the students was proposing to measure lithium. Lithium is a metal which is used in batteries, but it's also important to regulate humor, like bipolar disorder. He was trying to develop a system and everything else, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him, have you looked at the internet? If the internet sells this kind of an instrument? He said, no. And then I was doing the presentation looking in the internet, and I found the equipment for 400 euros, which is cheap to very large equipments. So this is one of the points. So if this is a practical application, which is the case we work with, we have to look in the internet, which is our store, if they already sell it. Because if they don't, okay, I have a chance. But if they do it, my chance is very small. So my solution is not good because someone else has already done it.
Asking that, is it good to repeat the same work, the same research at different regions?
This is something that happens. I think is work because, for example, in chemistry, like agriculture, we talk about the same methodology for one type of land, let's say in Brazil. And then another work, which is the same methodology of the land in Nigeria, right? They're different. Although the methodology is the same, the outputs are different, right? Because the soil are different.
Then the lady who asked you question first, Prof, said she has a research problem which she will want you to react to, whether it is good or not. Eco-Excel program, teacher productivity, and learning outcomes in public primary schools in Lagos State.
Yes, I understand it because I have educational background. Yes, it's just actually trying to ask that there is a program in Lagos State, Eco-Excel. It's just a program or a campaign that they want people to key into. Eco is a Lagos, so we call it Eco. That is the local name, but Lagos in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, that is Eco-Excel. It's a program. Then teachers' productivity and learning outcomes. There are two parameters, teachers' productivity and how does it transform into learning outcomes in the students in public primary schools in Lagos State within the Eco-Excel program. Yes, sir. So for me, this, based on the previous webinars we've had, this is a very nice topic. Talking about the research gap and all of that, I'm not going into that, but the topic is well formulated because all the parameters, the variables are there. The direction is there. The only thing I think is not here is the time frame, which can come in your objective. For how long do you want to look at this problem? For 10 years, 20 years, though that can come in your object, but the topic is well formulated. Now, going to the research gap, we don't know how far that this Eco-Excel has been inaugurated, and we don't know anything, but you've had so many tools from Prof today that you can explore to get if the research gap has been filled or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much.